right. Hey, welcome to Ask a Pastor. I'm joined by a friend of mine, John Landis, who
Hello.
also runs the emergency department at Passavant Hospital. So he's a doctor here in the UPMC system, has been for a number of years. And we thought it would be great today just to have a conversation around some of the things that are happening with coronavirus. So first, just some real background things and necessary things for all of us to understand and know. And then as we get a chance to go a little farther, maybe some of the spiritual questions around it as well. So John,
Sure.
tell us first just kind of what is it that is significant for people as they are thinking about this issue. What is it that they should know about this whole thing that maybe they're not hearing through all of the media that they're taking in?
Right. Well, I think some of the problem is all the media. You get so many sources of different media, liberal, conservative, something down the middle, and sometimes it's hard to decipher exactly what to believe from the media. But, I think if you listen to what the CDC has to say, that's probably the best source to go through rather than CNN.com or Fox News or Yahoo. That really gives the information that guides the medical community and, how we approach folks. Is there something magic that people don't know? I don't think so. In our discussion, I recall telling you that when I told my family that it was time to lock down, time to quarantine, time to isolate, you expect pushback from kids that are our age, kids age, right? 22, 20 and 18. You expect some pushback from them, and they really gave no pushback. As I mentioned, they said, when you said that, we knew you were serious. And so it's been good. They've managed that. So that's what I would tell folks is that this quarantine piece of it is not a joke. The social distancing piece is not a joke. To wash your hands frequently, not just after you go to the bathroom, if that's something you do or don't do, wash your hands frequently, after touching things. That video you showed yesterday before the service kind of gives the opposite side of washing your hands. And then what did you touch? You can completely overwhelm yourself, kind of freak yourself out with, did I touch something? Do I need to wash my hands again? I don't think it has to be to that extreme. And, maybe we can talk about some of the anxieties that go with this whole thing that are probably, equally as troublesome as the virus itself.
Yeah. So one of my questions is, where is this headed? So social distancing and quarantine makes sense. Like I get it. I don't see how in June all of a sudden people are magically saying, "Hey, we're going back and doing things we were doing 2 months ago." So give us a sense, just medically, of where this is headed this summer, maybe in the fall as well.
Yeah, I think that is, a million or billion dollar question. I don't think that the medical community really knows. So, of course, some of the early information that came out was we wanted to flatten the curve. Well, what did that mean? From the medical community, that meant doing things such that we didn't have all the cases all at once like New York did. So we got that message in the Pittsburgh area pretty early, and I think people have done a good job of isolating themselves. So, at the hospitals, we haven't seen the overwhelming number of cases like they have kind of in the war zone in New York City. And that certainly is a tough place. But, where is it going to be in June? Well, hopefully, we can flatten this curve. And by flattening the curve, we decrease the stresses on the healthcare system, decrease the spread of the virus, and kind of buying ourselves some time to either find a treatment, to find a vaccine, or to let it peter out. If you look at the SARS virus and the MERS virus, which were two similar two similar viruses, not quite as contagious, but they didn't cause a global pandemic. We were worried at the time that they might, but those just kind of died out on their own. So if you don't have new people being infected, there could be some hope and prayer that the whole thing just dies out on its own. I doubt that's going to be the case, but that certainly is within the realm of what we're thinking.
Okay.
So I know I didn't really completely answer where we'll be in the fall. I can't imagine that we'll all be isolated at home in the fall, because then we might all be choosing B. I choose B, right? Hopefully we're buying ourselves time to ramp up testing, ramp up tracing patients that are actively infected, and we'll be able to have a positive outcome by the summer or fall.
So what do you make? I've had some people just send me some things that basically say things like, hey, there's treatments that we're not hearing, hydrochloroquine, zinc, those kinds of things. Have gin and tonic every day, you'll be fine. What do you make of those kinds of pronouncements from people?
Right. So, that again goes to where you might be getting your media information from. If you again go to the CDC, there's all sorts of information on hydrochloroquine and chloroquine, which are, a couple of anti-malaria drugs. I'll tell you from personal experience, taking them is no fun. I took them when we went to the Solomon Islands. One time we were in southern Costa Rica, and I took them, and they cause headaches and nightmares and trouble sleeping. So they're not benign drugs. Zinc is over the counter. If you feel like zinc might help you, then go ahead and take some zinc. But if you're really looking at the medical community and how we look at drugs, medications, there just hasn't been any studies that say this is a proven treatment for COVID-19. We have medications that are proven treatments for high blood pressure, heart failure, diabetes, but we really don't have any track record with any of these medications. So then you're just dealing with anecdotal information, maybe a story of someone saying, oh, well, I had hydroxychloroquine and I got all better in 2 days. There just isn't the study behind it. I will say, just a little plug for UPMC, we've started a study that's looking at hydroxychloroquine in the patients that our facilities are treating, mainly in the intensive care unit. So we'll get some information on it. There's other medications that have been released for compassionate use. Some of the antiviral medications, the FDA has said, well, there may be some benefit to some of these medications. So the compassionate uses, we can use them off-label. One medication was developed for Ebola. There may be some benefit in this virus. So I would say that, again, refer back to the CDC if you're reading about treatments that may be quackery, maybe not quackery. I know I read early on somebody in India was drinking bull urine, and that was supposed to prevent coronavirus, and it's probably not.
So you
That's where a little bit of
want, but may not be recommended.
Yeah, you have to have an amount of wisdom and not worry about this, and again, not worry that somebody's withholding medications that are beneficial. Speaking for the medical community, infectious disease community, we're doing everything we can for every single patient. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So the government has now come out and said, hey, wear cloth masks. And then people are saying, well, it's an option, you don't need to. So when you go in public, is it helpful to wear a cloth mask or is it not?
Yeah, I think any sort of face covering is beneficial. Very early on, I think my wife was one of the first ones at the grocery store with a mask and some gloves on. A cloth mask. I think anything that you can do to protect yourself. Again, we don't really know a whole lot about how this virus spreads. And, there's some models that a simple cough or a sneeze in the grocery store will, spread this thing 12, 20 feet. Granted, the masks that we use at the hospital, especially the N95 masks that are in the news, kind of in short supply. Those are a virus safe. So down to a specific micron, they'll filter out what you breathe in. So clearly, those would be beneficial. But we're saying not everybody needs an N95 when you go to the grocery store. As a matter of fact, if everybody wore N95s, we wouldn't have them to treat patients in the medical community. But I do think there's some validity to a face covering or a mask. They have been doing it in Asia, China for a while, mainly for pollution reasons. But you have to wonder, they kind of nipped us in the bud in some of those areas. So would it be beneficial to wear a mask? I would say short of not wearing anything at all, certainly a cloth mask is good. Next would be, just a simple medical type of mask with loops behind the ears. And, overkill, again, wisdom, don't worry. Overkill would be, using an N95 when you go out.
Okay. So having been in, the medical community for a long time, I assume you've not seen anything quite like this in terms of its potential damage. Would that be fair?
That would be fair. That would be fair and true.
Okay. And so as a person of faith as well, how do you see God interacting with this? Like what do you do with you walk into the hospital day after day, you see cases coming through. I assume some really traumatic, some treatable and okay.
Right.
But what do you do with that from a spiritual standpoint?
Right. So I think your question, where is God in all this? He's the same place as he's always been. I don't think that he changes throughout, these particular types of human tragedies. Where was God during previous plagues? Where was God during World War II, World War One, Civil War? He's the same place as he's always been. He's in that same place that says, I'm here. If you come to me, certainly Christ is our Savior. But if you take a step back and say, well, what hand could he have in this? Is this something that's to bring us closer together? Is this something that has occurred from the evil standpoint? As a plague on humanity, to try and destroy everything that we've built up, I suppose. But I don't really, know that God's goodness is really reflected in that. So I have to answer for myself each day. Again, I pray that we don't have, the overabundance of patients like they have had in New York City. And certainly pray for my family and friends that they listen to some wisdom and don't worry about it too much. Probably the biggest fear, if you had to say, that I would have is for my family. I don't necessarily worry about myself when I go to work. I know I'm going to do everything I can, and it's not like this is a zombie virus that you get sick and so be it. Certainly, plenty of people recover, but I don't worry about going to work and taking care of these folks. It changes how I work a little bit, but I try to not worry about my family and kind of reflect back more on faith and where God is in all this for them also.
Yeah, you mentioned a little earlier about just the anxiety and the other kind of things that come with this. Talk about that a little bit, how you see those issues interrelating to this and being addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's multiple levels of anxiety that certainly can come along with this. There's the disease itself. There's the anxiety over, am I going to get it? What's that going to be like? There's the anxiety over, oh gosh, grandma's 85, she's in a nursing home. What's going to happen if she gets it? What's going to happen if someone in my family gets it? What's going to happen if I get it? Um, there's those sorts of anxieties. And again, I think you have to rely on prayer and your faith when you're faced with those sorts of anxieties. There's not a magic pill that's going to reduce those anxieties. You kind of say, I don't know what God's bigger plan is for this whole thing. That's how I look at any plague or war or death of a family member. I don't know what God's goodness is at the end of the day. I mean, this is a small chunk of time, a small microcosm, in the grand scheme of things. So, so that's to give us some hope at the end and not worry about it, as you had mentioned yesterday. For us as Christians, this isn't all there is. But on the other hand, none of us want to go, well, I'm okay with getting COVID virus on the one hand, and meeting Christ at the pearly gates. But that's just human for us to want to stay alive, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So,
It's a
there's
God-given instinct actually to say, I want to survive and
right.
live and cultivate on this earth as much as I can. That's part of, I think, how God wired us in creation. And you see it even in the creation mandate back in the beginning of Genesis, to give dominion to the earth.
Hmm.
So those are all God-given things that are part of, being human.
Right. Right. We talked about it as a family yesterday. There's some anxieties associated with being in close quarters for a while when maybe you haven't been in close quarters. But, it's amazing how you can kind of get to re-know your college kids that have come home and, interact with them and do some things. And, it leads to some memories. Oh, I remember when we used to, my wife hid Easter eggs yesterday for my, essentially grown adult children. So we had an Easter egg hunt, and she hid their Easter baskets with some boxed candy in it. I mean, if this hadn't happened, they probably would not be home for Easter.
Yeah.
They would be off at college studying finals and whatnot. We still do have one at home, but just kind of brought back some good memories. And so, you still have to ask yourself, is that part of God's plan for this? To bring us back together, to kind of escape all of the day-to-day things. Not that they've gone away, but there's certainly, if you look outside, there's a lot less external pressure on folks to get together with friends, to hang out with friends, to a lot of things, to go to the bar, whatever college age kids might do. So it's been fun in that respect. But there is some anxiety that can be associated with oh, you left the seat up, and where did you learn to leave the seat up? Well, 4 years of college, and it's just me, I leave the seat up. So those can be some kind of challenging anxieties. But the anxieties, again, you have to deal with them with just your faith and prayer, and also realize that the medical community is doing everything that they can. The government's doing everything that they can. I mean, this is kind of out of left field, as you said. In my 25 plus years of experience in medicine, having been through HIV during training and after. There were 9/11 was probably another big one, and we were all worried about anthrax and things after that. SARS came along, MERS came along. Of course, it never hit this country, so that was kind of a low level. So yeah, this is kind of an unprecedented thing. But the medical community, regardless of what you hear in the media, it is as prepared as we can be.
Yeah. So, it is interesting that the time just being home more, I think, is
Right.
for everybody is a unique adjustment. And yeah, we did something similar. We had always, when my kids were little, done an Easter basket hunt throughout the house,
Hmm.
scavenger hunt.
Right.
We redid it yesterday, and
Yep.
on Easter Sunday had that all going on. It was almost weird, uh,
Yeah.
but it was fun in its own way. So
Yeah.
we just have a couple minutes left, John. Tell us, what do you want people to know about just this whole thing that would be important as a doctor who works in it, with it, day after day right now? What do you want people to know that would be important?
Well, as I said, I think you have to watch where you get your sources of information. So, I always refer when friends, family ask me, what about this? What about that? I will refer them to a particular section of the CDC website, which provides good information. As I sent out in a group text to the guys in our small group fairly early on. It's serious. Wash your hands, isolate, stay at home, wear a mask if you go out. Those are all important things. I think we're at a stage right now where in Pittsburgh, at least, we have flattened that curve and we've gotten a hold of this. But now is not the time to say, well, they say that the cases are not as bad as they have been, so maybe I can just go out. I'll meet with friends. I'll have a party. Those are the sorts of events where it's like, oops, now we got 20 or 30 new cases. So it's not time to take our foot off the gas, as uncomfortable as it might be. We need to really stick with what we're doing right now. Certainly, if you have, interestingly, in the emergency department, we've seen a decline in the patients that we've been seeing. We're not seeing quite as many belly pains, chest pains. My concern with that is people are sitting at home, perhaps with some medical problem that normally, if COVID weren't out there, they would go to the hospital for. So, I think people need to know that the hospital and especially the emergency department, but the inpatient units, if you have to be admitted, it's not like the whole place isn't a COVID ward. You can safely come to the emergency department and not expose yourself for whatever your problem might be. And we see you. So that's a big thing I wanted to get out there. If
That's
people
really
have medical problems, don't ignore them. We're always there, and we're not inundated. This won't be like going to an ER in New York, where there's apparently lots of bad things going on. We'll leave it at that. So, if you have a medical problem, please, do as you would have done in any time of need. So those are really some of the big things.
That's really helpful. Well, super, John. Well, thank you for taking a few minutes here to just share your
Yeah,
perspective and
absolutely.
wisdom. And hopefully, for those of you listening, you found just some credible information here to help you as you navigate this season. And as always, if you have things that you would love to hear us talk about on this Ask a Pastor podcast, send them to askapastor@orchardhillchurch.com, and we'll be happy to interact with it in the days ahead. So thanks. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Kurt.